At my brother's party, Dad toasted him as his only son worth acknowledging. While everyone mocked me as a leech and waste of space, I just smiled, left quietly. Now they're crying outside my locked door, begging to be let in. I was standing in the middle of my parents' living room in Aurora, Colorado, with 50 sets of eyes on me, when my father lifted his whiskey glass and said the words that finally snapped something loose inside my chest. To my only child worth the oxygen he breathes, happy birthday, Mason. People laughed. Not the uneasy chuckles I'd heard before. This time it was full-bodied, real laughter. Like the punchline had been building all night and I was the setup. I felt the floor tilt under me. Let me rewind for 1 minute. I'm Evan, 30. My younger brother, Mason, is 27 and the golden child since birth. Mom and Dad, Harold and Denise, have treated him like the second coming of Warren Buffett since he was old enough to hold a TI-84. Meanwhile, I've always been the one they describe as trying his best, which is the polite family code for lifelong disappointment. So when Mason got promoted last month, some big finance thing, making $160,000, my parents planned this giant birthday bash. They rented bartenders. They hired a private chef. They printed out menus with Mason's initials on them like he was some celebrity chef and not just an Excel jockey. I still showed up. Because blood, right? And because even after all these years, some pathetic part of me still thought maybe this time would be different. I even brought him something meaningful. A restored 1972 Hamilton Field watch, the same model our grandfather wore in Vietnam. I spent 3 weeks tracking it down, 2 nights driving to pick it up, and nearly a month's rent getting it restored. When I handed it to him, he lit up, just for a heartbeat. Then Dad wandered over, already half drunk, and saw the box. That's when he made the toast. I stared at him, trying to process what he'd just said, when Mason held up the watch and added, "What is this, Ev? Something from the thrift store? You shouldn't have spent your allowance." More laughter, louder. Then Mom chimed in. "Everyone hide your purses," she called out. "My little financial burden has arrived. And payday's not until Friday." Some people gasped. Some laughed. Most just watched me like I was a live exhibit. My aunt, now apparently emboldened, said, "Honestly, Evan, it's impressive being 30 and still contributing nothing. You should get an award." Then my uncle added, "Parasites at least help the ecosystem. This one, not so much." The room erupted. But that wasn't the real shock. The real shock was that Mason didn't say a single word to defend me. Not one. He just stood there laughing with everyone else, clutching the watch I'd spent weeks hunting down. And maybe I could have swallowed that. Maybe I could have forced a smile and endured the humiliation like I've always done. But then, right before I turned to leave, someone tapped my arm. It was a woman I didn't recognize, maybe mid-30s, wearing a navy dress and holding a champagne flute. She leaned in, kept her voice low, and said, "You should get out of here. You have no idea what they've been saying about you behind your back tonight." I froze. "What do you mean?" I whispered. She looked over her shoulder, making sure no one noticed us. "Just go," she said. "Trust me. It's worse than you think." And then she slipped back into the crowd like she had never spoken to me. I walked out of that house without another word. But what she said has been eating me alive ever since. Because I know my family is cruel. But what if they've been hiding something even darker? Growing up in Aurora, Colorado, our house always looked perfect from the outside. White siding, manicured lawn, the whole suburban postcard. But if you walked inside, you'd notice the imbalance immediately. My parents didn't just favor Mason. They built their entire identity around him. He was their legacy. I was their liability. Started small. Mason got private tutors. I got figure it out. He got a new bike every Christmas. I got whatever was on sale at Walmart. He got applause, I got advice. Every achievement of his was a family event. Every achievement of mine was an unexpected surprise. Like they couldn't believe I'd managed it. But the shift became obvious when Mason hit high school. My grades were solid, mostly A's and B's. But Mason joined the debate team, got a part-time internship with some local business guy, and suddenly my parents acted like he was destined for the national stage. They bragged about him to the neighbors, teachers, random cashiers. Meanwhile, I started hearing things like, well, Evan's more creative. Evan's not the academic type. He'll find his place eventually. I was 15. Imagine being told your fate is mediocrity before you even knew who you wanted to be. The worst part was that Mason seemed to love the pedestal. He wasn't cruel, not yet. But he absorbed the role. The favored son. The chosen one. He got used to being praised, defended, protected. I got used to being tolerated. After high school, he went to CU Boulder for finance. My parents threw a farewell dinner at some expensive steakhouse. 20 people. Toasts. Gifts. Tears. When I started community college 2 years earlier, Mom had handed me a $25 gas card and said, "Don't waste it." I wish I were exaggerating. And yeah, I've made mistakes. I had a rough patch in my early 20s. A breakup that wrecked me. A job I quit too impulsively. A year where I drifted. And once you slip even slightly in my family, it becomes your permanent label. Evan's struggling. Evan's fragile. Evan needs guidance. They said those things loudly, proudly, as if diagnosing a problem they tried so hard to prevent. But the truth was, I wasn't broken, I was just alone. When I finally landed a solid job in IT, no one asked about it. No questions, no congratulations. Meanwhile, Mason got a minor promotion 2 years ago, and they literally had balloons printed with his initials. But here's the part that stings the most. 2 years back, I overheard something I wasn't supposed to. Mom was on the phone with Aunt Linda. I was grabbing something from the garage when I heard her say, "Mason's our success story. Evan. We just hope he doesn't drag the family down again." I stood in the dark, holding a box of old Christmas decorations, realizing for the first time that I wasn't just underestimated. I was a burden to them. A narrative. A convenient contrast to make Mason shine brighter. And yet, I still tried. New certifications. Better job. Gym. Therapy. All of it, hoping one day they'd look at me and see someone worth respecting. But what that woman at the party told me, that there was more they'd said about me behind my back, has been scratching at the back of my brain nonstop. Because if this is what they say publicly, what the hell did they say privately? And why did a total stranger feel the need to warn me? Something is off. Something deeper. And I'm starting to think Mason wasn't just laughing because he's an asshole. I think he was laughing because he already knew what was coming. The morning after Mason's birthday disaster, I woke up with that woman's warning replaying in my head on a loop. You have no idea what they've been saying about you tonight. I didn't know her name. Didn't know who she came with. Didn't know why she chose to pull me aside. But I couldn't shake her voice. Steady, deliberate, almost apologetic. Like she wished she could say more but couldn't risk being caught. By noon, I was pacing around my apartment, replaying every detail of the party. The laughter, the comments, the way certain people looked at me, not amused, but smug, like they were in on something I wasn't. And it hit me that I'd been so focused on the humiliations they shouted to my face that I hadn't stopped to wonder what the hell they were saying behind my back. Something in my gut told me this was bigger than just cruel jokes. The next escalation came fast. Around 3 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from a guy I barely knew. Kyle, one of Mason's work friends. We talked maybe twice in our lives. His message said, "Hey man, sorry about last night. Didn't know the full situation." Full situation? What situation? I typed back, "What do you mean?" No reply, just left me on read. The silence was almost worse than an answer. A couple hours later, I drove to a coffee shop near Cherry Creek to clear my head. I was halfway through my latte when I saw someone waving at me through the window. It was Carter, the older guy who lived 2 floors above me. We weren't friends, but we talked enough for me to know he was blunt in a way that stepped over polite boundaries. He came inside, sat down across from me, and without even a hello said, "Ran into your brother last night." My stomach dropped. "What did he say?" I asked. Carter took a long sip of his Americano. "That you're struggling." He let that hang in the air. Financially, emotionally. Apparently, The whole family's been worried sick about you for months. I felt heat rise in my neck. That's bullshit, I said. I'm doing better than I have in years. I know, he said, but that's not the story they're spreading. A heavy, sick feeling settled in my chest. This wasn't just teasing. This was a narrative. Carter leaned forward. You need to know something else, he said. I asked why he talked about you like you're one bad day away from collapsing. He said, and here Carter paused, looking uncomfortable for the first time since I'd known him. He said you'd proven to be unpredictable in the past. Unpredictable. A loaded word. A dangerous word. The kind of word people use when they want others to question someone's stability. Did he give examples? I asked, my voice tight. Carter nodded slowly. That's the thing. He did. Too many. Like he'd rehearsed them. And that's when I felt it. This cold, creeping realization that Mason wasn't just passively benefiting from the family's favoritism. He was maintaining a narrative. Actively. Suddenly the party made more sense. The laughter. The looks. The lack of shock when Dad said what he said. It wasn't spontaneous cruelty. It was expected cruelty. Like everyone had already been primed. When I got home, I dug out my old laptop and opened a folder I hadn't looked at in years. Old emails, texts, screenshots. Times Mason had joked about me being unstable. Times Mom had called me fragile. Times Dad had weaponized my past mistakes. I realized something sickening. They'd been painting me as the family screw-up for years. Not because they believed it, but because it served them. That woman at the party wasn't warning me about humiliation. She was warning me about conspiracy. And then, right as I was putting the pieces together, my phone buzzed again. A number I didn't recognize. The voicemail was short. A woman's voice. The same voice from the party. We need to talk. Your brother and your parents. They've been planning something. Something involving you. Call me back. My hands were shaking. Planning what? I called the number back 3 times before she finally answered. Evan? She whispered. Yes. Who is this? It's Rachel, she said. I was at Mason's party last night. The woman in the navy dress. My pulse kicked up. What did you mean by, they've been planning something? There was a long pause. I could hear traffic in the background. Like she'd stepped outside somewhere, she didn't want to be overheard. I shouldn't even be talking to you, she said. If Mason finds out. What did he do? My voice cracked. I didn't care. Another pause. Then a breath like she was bracing herself. Your family's been telling people that you're unstable, that you're unpredictable, that you've had episodes. I felt the floor tilt again. That's not new, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. They've hinted that before. No, she said quickly. This is different. This is documented. My heart stopped. Documented how? I saw a file. A file. On me. What kind of file? I asked, forcing each word through a tightening throat. I work at the same firm as Mason, she said. We've been dating a few months. Her voice dipped like she hated admitting that. Sometimes he leaves things open on his computer. Last week, I saw a folder with your name on it. I gripped my phone harder. What was in it? She hesitated. I could hear her swallow. Screenshots, emails, photos, even a voice memo. My stomach twisted violently. What kind of photos? Pictures of your old apartment, the one you moved out of 3 years ago. Only from angles that made it look trashed. Clothes everywhere. Dishes piled up. A mattress on the floor. That apartment looked nothing like that, I whispered. I know, she said. But in the pictures, it painted a narrative. And the voice memo? That's the worst part, she said softly. Your dad recorded himself talking about how you broke down during a family argument a few years back. He made it sound like you had a full mental collapse. Like you were a danger to yourself. My mouth went dry. That never happened. I believe you, she said quickly. But Evan, the file wasn't just for show. They've been sending pieces of it to people. A hard, cold shiver ripped down my spine. Who? I asked, barely breathing. family friends, Mason's co-workers, people in your parents' neighborhood, maybe even your extended family. And, she inhaled sharply, I heard Mason talking about sending something to your employer. My old employer? I asked. No, she said softly. Your current one. The consulting firm you're working with. My blood iced. Why? I whispered. Why would he do that? She exhaled a shaky breath. Because Mason said he's tired of carrying the family's reputation alone. He said if you embarrass them again, he'll make sure everyone knows what Evan is really like. My hands were shaking so hard I had to set the phone down and switch to speaker. Rachel. What exactly were they planning? She lowered her voice again. They want to destroy your credibility before you something big. Before I what? Before you surpass Mason in success, she said. He said he can't let you rewrite the family hierarchy. Family hierarchy. Like this was a monarchy. Like Mason was defending his throne. That's not all, she added quietly. Your mom said something that made me call you. Something that scared me. I felt my heartbeat thud in my throat. What did she say? Rachel's voice dropped to a whisper. She said, better he be seen as unstable now than let him ruin things for Mason later. The air left my lungs. Not only were they trying to humiliate me, they were trying to preemptively sabotage my life. Before I had a chance to succeed. Before I had a chance to escape their narrative. Evan, Rachel said softly, you need to understand something. What? Your family wasn't mocking you at the party. They were setting the stage. My body went cold, because suddenly it all made sense. The toasts, the comments, the laughter, the looks. It wasn't cruelty. It was preparation. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every detail Rachel told me. A file, photos, fabricated stories, voice memos, a curated narrative of me as unstable, incompetent, unpredictable. And they'd been spreading it for months, maybe years. This wasn't family dysfunction. This was a coordinated character assassination. By morning, the fear was gone, replaced by something sharper, colder. Focus. I started the day with 3 goals. 1. Verify everything Rachel told me. 2. Protect my business and reputation. 3. Expose Mason and my parents for exactly what they were doing. The first step was finding proof. I texted Rachel, can we meet? Need details. She responded immediately. Lunch? Somewhere private. We met at a cafe in Lowry, tucked into a quiet corner booth. She looked anxious, like she was afraid Mason had followed her, which honestly wasn't paranoia at this point. She slid her phone across the table. I took pictures, she whispered. I opened her gallery, and everything she'd said was true. There were emails, screened, cropped, between my parents discussing my concerning behavior. Mason had forwarded some of them to himself. There were photos of my old apartment, staged to look like a crash site. One picture even had a tipped-over trash bin that definitely wasn't mine. But what hit me hardest was a screenshot of a draft email. To hr@michaelyandcompany.com subject. Concern regarding consultant Evan R. I stared at the screen, heartbeat pounding. They didn't send it, Rachel said quickly. Not yet. But Mason said he'd finish it if your dad agreed. The draft described me as erratic, unreliable, emotionally unstable. It implied they'd observed troubling patterns and wanted to alert the company for liability reasons. Liability. They weren't just trying to humiliate me. They were trying to nuke my career, cut me off financially, force me back under their control. Why? Rachel answered that without me asking. Your family talks about success like it's limited, like there's not enough to share. Mason said if you move up, he moves down. He really believes that. I closed my eyes, anger pulsing behind my ribs. Why warn me? I asked. She looked down at her hands. Because Mason isn't who he thinks he is. He's cruel, strategic. I didn't see it at first, but the deeper I got in the relationship, the more I realized he's obsessed with image. And your parents enable it. And me? I asked. You're the shadow he needs. If you rise, he loses the spotlight. I sat back. This wasn't jealousy. This wasn't sibling rivalry. This was a structural power dynamic my parents had built and he had learned to weaponize. But I wasn't gonna lie down and let them trash my life. That afternoon, I got to work. Step 1. Secure my business. I called my attorney, a guy named Mark I'd met through a client, and explained that someone might try to sabotage my reputation with false claims. He didn't even blink. Document everything, he said. Every call, every text, every incident. If they make a move, we file for defamation and tortious interference. For the first time in days, I felt the ground under my feet again. Step 2. Protect my name. I drafted a memo for my clients outlining an attempted reputational attack by a third party. I didn't name names. Not yet. But I planted seeds. Prepared the soil. Step 3. Gather evidence. I backed up Rachel's files. Saved screenshots. Created an encrypted folder. Recorded my recollection of the party. Every insult, every witness. Step 4. Build leverage. I needed something undeniable. Something they couldn't spin. I didn't know what yet, but I knew where to look. If Mason had a file on me, maybe I could build one on him. And my parents. Then, around 7 p.m., as I was sorting through old hard drives, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You're making a mistake. Stop asking questions. My lungs froze. Then another message. You don't know what Mason has on you. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about reputation. This went deeper, much deeper. The texts didn't scare me. They pissed me off. But the part that grabbed me by the throat was the last line. You don't know what Mason has on you. On me? What the hell could Mason possibly have? By midnight, I was tearing through digital archives like a man possessed. Old emails, old drives, cloud backups, financial files. Nothing. If Mason had dirt, it wasn't from me. Which meant one terrifying thing. They invented something. Or worse, they twisted something real into something weaponized. Around 1 a.m., my phone lit up again. This time it was Rachel. Can I come over? Something happened. 10 minutes later she was on my couch, hands shaking. I gave her water and waited. Evan, she said, voice cracking. I think Mason knows I told you. My stomach dropped. How? She wiped her eyes. He was acting weird tonight, silent, watching me. Then he asked, really casually, if I noticed anything interesting at the party. When I didn't answer, he said, people who involve themselves in things they don't understand tend to create bigger problems. I clenched my fists. What else? She hesitated, then said, he told me you weren't well, that you've been unstable for years, that you've been fixating on him. He even implied you once threatened him. I almost laughed, but it came out more like a growl. I never threatened him once in my life. I know, she said, but he was so calm when he said it, like he'd practiced it. I sat down across from her. Rachel, you said there were files about me. Anything else you saw? Anything that didn't make sense? She nodded slowly. There was a folder inside the folder. Password protected. It was labeled ER backup. My initials. What do you think is in it? That's the thing, she whispered. I asked him about it. I pretended to be playful, just messing around. He froze, like stone. And he said, if Evan keeps pushing, he'll find out. A chill ran down my spine. Find out what? Then she added something that made my entire world tilt sideways. And your parents were talking too. Not about the file. About last year. Something that happened. Something they said you didn't need to remember. I stared at her. What are you talking about? She swallowed. They were talking about a night in March. They said they were surprised he didn't bring it up yet. And Mason laughed and said, he won't. He blocked it out. Blocked it out. Blocked what out? For a moment I forgot how to breathe. Rachel, I didn't block out anything. I remember last year perfectly. She shook her head. Your dad said, let's hope he never connects the dots. My pulse thundered in my ears. I have no idea what they're talking about, I said. But that wasn't completely true. There was one thing from last year. One thing I hadn't thought about in months. I'd ended up in the ER. A concussion. Minor. I'd slipped in my apartment and hit my head. At least, that's what I assumed. I'd woken up on the kitchen floor with no memory of how long I'd been out. My parents visited. Mason came too. But they didn't stay long. And afterward, they acted strangely gentle for a few days. Like they expected me to break. I rubbed my temples as the pieces refused to align. Evan, Rachel whispered. What happened last year? I don't know. I whispered it like a confession. She leaned forward, gripping my hand. You need to find out, she said. Because whatever it is, they're counting on you not remembering. My phone buzzed. Another unknown number. A single line. Stop digging. You don't want the truth about last March. The room went silent. For the first time in this whole nightmare, I felt something I hadn't felt before. Not anger. Not humiliation. Not fear. Something darker. Determination. Because whatever happened last March, they hid it from me, and they thought I'd never uncover it. The cold, horrifying truth about why they did what they did. I didn't go to work the next day. I spent the morning pacing my apartment like a trapped animal, replaying every second of that ER visit last March. I remembered the bright lights, the nurse's voice, the headache that felt like my skull was splitting. But every time I tried to remember how I got hurt, my mind hit a wall, like a blank frame in a film reel. By noon, I'd had enough. If my family wasn't going to tell me the truth, I'd find it myself. I drove to UC Health Aurora, the hospital where I'd been treated. The woman at the front desk frowned when I asked for my records but eventually handed me a packet with the same polite neutrality they give everyone. But when I read the report in my car, I nearly threw up. Patient brought in by family members. Reported fall inside residence. Family states patient was confused upon discovery. Family requested patient not be questioned until they arrived. I read it again. They brought me in. Not the ambulance I'd assumed. Them. And they told the hospital not to question me. Why? Why would they do that? The next line hit even harder. Exhibits symptoms of concussion with atypical presentation. Possible disorientation. Patient unable to recall events preceding fall. Family reports a history of emotional volatility. History of emotional volatility? I never had that. Not once. They planted that. They were laying groundwork even then. But it gets worse. Under notes, someone had scribbled, patient calm but fearful. Asked if someone had been in his apartment. Family insisted it was confusion. I gripped the steering wheel so hard it creaked. I'd asked if someone was in my apartment. Because I wasn't alone when I fell. I didn't slip. Someone was there. Once the panic settled enough for me to think straight, I drove straight to my old building. I hadn't been there in months. The new tenant, a tired-looking guy in his 40s, opened the door a crack. I explained I used to live there and asked if anything weird had ever been reported. He hesitated, then said the thing that detonated everything inside me. The superintendent said your lock was tampered with once. Looked forced, but nothing was taken. He replaced it the next day. My voice came out thin. When? He thought. Late March. My hand went numb around my phone. Late March. The same week I ended up in the hospital. The same week I woke up on the floor with no memory. The same week my family suddenly acted soft and careful. I sat in my car for a long time after that, staring at the steering wheel, my mind forming the shape of a truth I didn't want to look at directly. I texted Rachel everything. She called immediately, voice shaking. Evan, I need to tell you something else. Mason always bragged about how he kept the family together. He said you were one bad decision away from ruining everything they worked for. He said he wasn't going to let you derail their future. Derail their future how? She swallowed hard. Your dad told him something years ago, that you were never meant to have the same opportunities as Mason. That Mason was the investment. You were the controllable variable. My stomach clenched. What does that even mean? It means, Rachel whispered, that your parents decided your entire role in the family, and they expected Mason to maintain it. At any cost. I stared out the windshield as her words sank in. This wasn't favoritism. It wasn't teasing. It wasn't even cruelty. It was strategy. Cold, calculated, generational strategy. They didn't want me unstable. They wanted me discredited, predictably weak, permanently beneath Mason, so the world would never question the hierarchy. They didn't humiliate me because it was fun. They humiliated me because it protected their chosen son. And what happened in my apartment last March? Whether they did it themselves or orchestrated it, it was intentional. Because a confident, successful Evan threatened everything. And they were willing to ruin my life to stop that from happening. The truth didn't break me, clarified me. For the first time in my entire life, I saw my family with perfect, brutal accuracy. They weren't messy or emotional. They weren't ignorant of the damage they caused. They were intentional. And if they were willing to destroy my reputation, sabotage my career, and rewrite my sanity to keep me beneath Mason, then I had every right, no, every obligation, to expose them for exactly who they were. So I planned. Quietly, carefully. No screaming. No confrontations. No family discussions. I was done playing by their rules. Step 1, the file. I hired a digital forensics guy, someone I'd subcontracted with before. I gave him Rachel's screenshots and asked him to trace metadata, IP sources, timestamps. He was good. Within days, he'd mapped everything. The edited apartment photos were created on Mason's laptop. The voice memo was recorded by my dad 3 days after my concussion. The ER backup folder existed on all 3 of their devices. And this was the prize, emails between my parents and Mason openly discussing managing Evan's narrative. It was all there, undeniable, weaponized, and time-stamped. Step 2, leverage. I compiled a folder of my own. Screenshots, medical records proving the manipulation, evidence of the lock tampering, text messages insinuating mental instability. Everything. I wrote a single statement. Any attempt to contact my clients, my workplace, or myself with fabricated accusations will result in immediate legal action, both civil and criminal. Attached is everything I have documenting your coordinated campaign. I didn't send it. Not yet. First, I wanted them to feel it. Step 3, professional shielding. I met with each of my major clients one by one. I told them the truth. Not all the details, just enough. There is an unstable family situation, and someone may try to sabotage my credibility. Here is documented proof preemptively disproving anything they might claim. Every client backed me. Every one. Turns out when you're good at what you do and honest about threats, people trust you. Step 4, exposure. The final move was the quietest and the most effective. I printed every piece of evidence and had my lawyer send formal cease and desist letters to my parents and Mason. Not emails they could ignore. Not conversations they could twist. Legal documents. Certified mail. Signatures required. The shockwave was immediate. My dad called first. He didn't yell. He begged. Evan, you don't understand. We were just trying to protect you. I hung up. Mom called next, sobbing, saying I was destroying the family. I hung up. Mason texted me, "You're overreacting. You think you can ruin me?" I didn't respond. My lawyer did. 3 days later, they each received notice of potential claims. Defamation, harassment, tortious interference with business, negligence leading to bodily harm. Regarding the March incident, the calls stopped after that. Completely. They went silent not because they felt guilty, but because they were terrified. Step 5. Closure. Last week, I stood outside my new office, a small converted loft in Denver that my business had grown into, and realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad. Wasn't resentful. Wasn't hungry for apologies that would never come. I was free. Truly, finally free. My family has collapsed into the chaos they always held at bay by pinning everything on me. I hear things through neighbors and extended relatives. How my parents barely speak. How Mason's co-workers keep their distance. How their perfect image is unraveling. And the best part? I didn't have to destroy them. I simply stopped letting them destroy me. My revenge wasn't loud. It was quiet, professional, permanent. I built a life where their narrative doesn't exist. When I locked my new office door that night, I said one final thing to myself. Something I wish teenage me could have heard. You were never the broken one. You were just surrounded by people who needed you to stay broken. And that's my closure. My family didn't lose me. They forfeited me. Turns out, when you stop being the family scapegoat, everyone else finally has to face their own reflection.